Please, take a seat. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Please take a seat. Good afternoon, and welcome to the State Department. President Yoon, Mrs. Kim, it is a great pleasure to have you here with us today. Now, some of you may have heard this and actually seen it, but last night, President Yoon brought down the house at the state dinner. Singing American Pie. So, Mr. President, I want you to know, we have two great American musical giants with us here today, Herbie Hancock and Diane Reeves. So, if you feel moved to deliver another performance, don't let the music die, Mr. President. Evan and I are delighted to join Vice President Harris, Second Gentleman Doug Emhoff, in welcoming all of you here today. And I know we're joined by an incredible group of friends, colleagues. Particularly, I want to salute the members of Congress who are here. President Yoon just came from delivering an extraordinary speech to a joint session. It has been 70 years since the United States and the Republic of Korea formed our alliance, making official a bond that was forged by Korean and American soldiers in the crucible of war. Kachi Kapshida, we go together. That was their motto. And indeed, they lived and fought and died shoulder to shoulder. From the beginning, American and Korean leaders understood that our alliance was about more than our two nations. President Eisenhower, speaking to Congress, said that it was an affirmation of our belief that the security of an individual nation in the free world depends on the security of its partners and constitutes another link in the collective security of free nations. It was also a way to create space for Korean and American entrepreneurs and innovators, scientists and artists, governments and citizens to use that security and their freedom to improve our societies in real ways. And who, looking at how far we've come since that time, would question whether our partnership has lived up to its promise. We see the extraordinary emergence of Korea in virtually every domain around the world, not just as the strongest of security partners for the United States, but in science, technology, the arts, culture. We have never wavered in our commitment to our mutual defense. We've invested in our shared prosperity and competitiveness, and we have decades of mutual growth to show for it, including in the industries and technologies that are shaping the future, from quantum computing to renewable energy to biotech. We've invested in the foundation of our strength, our democracies, while also deepening ties to our partners who share our commitment to freedom, to equal opportunity, to human rights, to the rule of law. That's why President Biden convened the first two summits for democracy, the second of which was co-hosted by President Yoon, and it's why Seoul will take up the mantle now in leading the third summit for democracy next year. As we think about all the ways that our countries go together, it's easy to take for granted our closeness, to see as somehow inevitable the parallel arcs that U.S. and Korea have traced over time. But the reality is this: the friendship between nations, like all friendships, ultimately comes down to the actions of individuals. And it's here that I'd like to express our enormous gratitude to President Yoon. At a time of tremendous challenge to the international rule of law and the United Nations Charter, to our democracies, indeed to our planet, Mr. President, your principled leadership has helped bring us even closer together and has made Korea a global pivotal state. And that's to the benefit of Koreans, Americans, and indeed, the people around the world. Now, it's not just our leaders who are committed to deepening our friendship, but our people. starting with Korean Americans. This year also marks the 120th anniversary of the arrival of the first Korean immigrants to America. 100 or so men, women, and children who arrived on Honolulu's shores. Today, the extraordinary contributions of generations of Korean Americans are woven into the fabric of American society, from the sweeping histories of Min Jin Lee's novels to the explosive flavors of David Chang's dishes, to the exceptional service of diplomats right here at the State Department. Like one I'd like to mention today, Julie Chung. Julie was just 5 years old when, in 1977, her family moved from Seoul to California. She didn't speak a word of English. Her dad got a job on the drafting floor of an engineering company. Her mom worked nights washing dishes in a restaurant. Julie's mom went on to become a librarian and a church deacon. Her dad later designed a heating system to prevent O-rings from freezing on space shuttles. That's what had caused the Challenger explosion, allowing NASA to restart the space missions. And Julie joined the first cohort of Pickering Fellows at the State Department, which encourages the service of historically underrepresented minorities. Today, Julie's dad's engineering company is working on technology that will help the United States, Korea, and other partners who are joined in the Artemis Accord return astronauts to the moon, including the first woman and first person of color. And Julie is the United States ambassador to Sri Lanka. If these are the threads that are connecting the United States and Korea through a single family, just think how rich, how deep the ties are that are binding our nations together. So, President Yoon, Mrs. Kim, all of our distinguished guests, I ask you to raise a glass with me, and we'll even find a glass to raise. To all the ties that make our nations go together, and to all the places that they'll take us. Mr. President. And now it's my great pleasure to turn it over to the Vice President of the United States.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Thank you, Secretary Blinken, Ms. Evan Ryan, for hosting us here at the State Department, and to the members of Congress who are here, including Speaker Emerita Nancy Pelosi, Chairman Menendez, and Chairman McCall. Thank you each. And there are many members of the President's Cabinet who are here, and I thank you as well, including all of the leaders from the Korean American community and all of those who believe in the importance of strengthening the ties between the United States and South Korea. So, Mr. President, it has been a pleasure to be with you these last couple of days. Mrs. Kim, it has been a great pleasure for my husband, the Second Gentleman of the United States, to also spend time with you and to co-host the luncheon this year. I thank you, Mr. President, for the warm welcome you offered me when I visited Seoul last September and when the Second Gentleman was there to attend your inauguration in May of last year. President Yoon, you campaigned for office on a promise to strengthen the alliance between our nations, and you have delivered. My visit to Seoul, as well as this state visit, are a demonstration of the expansive agenda between our two nations, and that our alliance is truly a global one, an alliance that is leading on the most pressing issues of our time. In Seoul, you and I outlined steps to strengthen our collective defense in the face of aggression and provocations in the region. We renewed our commitment to a free and open Indo-Pacific and the freedom of navigation and the free flow of commerce. I thanked you then, as I do now, for standing strong in the face of Russia's unprovoked aggression in Ukraine, and for standing up for international rules-based order. We have strategized together on a clean energy future, on resilient supply chains and advanced technologies. We have consulted on democracy, and I thank you for your speech today. We have discussed gender equality, and of course, we have talked about our mutual excitement about space exploration. In fact, earlier this week, you and I advanced our space cooperation during a visit to Goddard. And on a personal note, we share a background as prosecutors and a mutual commitment. Yes. And our mutual commitment, therefore, to the rule of law, to justice, and to accountability. President Yoon, you have set South Korea on a path to economic and global success. And together, the Biden-Harris administration, with your administration, has set our alliance on a path forward to continue to deliver security and prosperity for our people. On the issue of security, the alliance between the United States and South Korea was forged in shared sacrifice, as you so eloquently described earlier today. During the Korean War, Americans and Koreans fought and died together to defend against aggression. We fought together for peace and security and for freedom. More than 36,000 American service members paid the ultimate sacrifice for this noble cause, as did 137,000 soldiers from your country. During this state visit, we once again solemnly honor that shared sacrifice. And in a demonstration of our enduring commitment to our collective security, today, more than 28,000 American service members stand guard in your country to continue to deter and defend against shared threats. It was my great honor and privilege to meet with some of them when I visited the DMZ last year. They have demonstrated extraordinary dedication, skill, and discipline, and they proudly stand shoulder to shoulder with their South Korean counterparts, representing the best of America's commitment to our alliance. We also share a mutual commitment to prosperity. Over the course of the last 3 decades, South Korea has become an economic powerhouse, as demonstrated by the fact that your country, as you mentioned earlier, represents the 10th largest economy in the world. And there are now 16 South Korean Fortune 500 companies, some of the most influential in the world. And South Korea is a global leader on advanced technology, semiconductors, and the clean energy economy. Together, our alliance is driving economic growth around the globe. And to that end, under President Biden and our administration, we have made historic investments, from the Inflation Reduction Act to the CHIPS and Science Act. We are investing billions of dollars to revitalize American manufacturing, which means companies, including South Korean companies, will create good-paying jobs here in the United States. President Biden and I are particularly proud that since we have taken office, Korean firms have invested more than $100 billion in the United States, much of which will accelerate our transition to a clean energy economy. For example, SK and LG are investing billions in electric car battery plants in Georgia. I see the senator from Georgia is here. Michigan, Ohio, and Tennessee. Hyundai will manufacture electric cars in America. Samsung is constructing a $17 billion chip factory in Texas. Chairman McCall. And earlier this month, I visited a Q-Cells plant in Dalton, Georgia, which manufactures solar panels. And thanks to the Inflation Reduction Act, that plant will triple its solar panel production. Altogether, these investments will create tens of thousands of American jobs, address the climate crisis, and build prosperity for the people of both our nations. South Korea and the United States, as the Secretary has mentioned, also share strong cultural and people-to-people ties. K-pop bands, they top the billboards in the United States, including BTS, who I had the great pleasure of meeting and inviting to my office in the West Wing. And to the great pleasure of my niece, I must tell you. I also think of the Emmy Award-winning TV shows like Squid Games, which I will confess Doug and I binge-watched at home over a series of weeks. And I think of the actress, Yoon who I met in Seoul last year when I convened groundbreaking South Korean women. She is the first Korean to win an Academy Award for acting. These are examples of the cultural ties and the intertwined history between our nations. And we take pride that the United States is home to the largest Korean population in the world outside of the Korean Peninsula. And we recall history. There are those who came to Hawaii, the senator from Hawaii is here, to work in agriculture in the early 20th century, those who came after the Korean War, and those who arrived in recent decades to study in American universities and to build businesses here. There are now nearly 2 million Americans of Korean descent, including luminaries like Johnny Kim, the astronaut who we visited with at Goddard earlier this week, including members of Congress who are here, including Representatives Andy Kim, Young Kim, Marilyn Strickland, and Michelle Steele. There they are, who are with us today. And this list also includes a member of my family, my sister-in-law, Dr. Judy Lee, who is also with us today. So I will conclude by saying to you, President Yoon, across all of the areas I have just mentioned, your leadership has enabled further progress for our two nations. And our administration is grateful to you for strengthening our ties and serving as a steadfast ally and partner and friend. This is a decisive moment in our world's history, a critical moment, an inflection point in many ways. And at a time when autocracy and aggression are all too prevalent, your leadership is critical. I know that we share a vision of the world, a secure, prosperous world with strong alliances and strong rules and norms. And I know that all of this will benefit from the relationship that we have with the Korean people, between the American people and the Korean people, and people around the world indeed will benefit. In 1953, as the Korean armistice approached, President Eisenhower wrote to President Ri in Seoul. He wrote, and I quote, "There cannot be independence without interdependence." So true. He went on to say, "And there cannot be human liberty except as men recognize," and I will add women, "that they are bound together by ties of common destiny." President Yoon, this remains true today. I believe our nations and our people are increasingly bound together in a shared future and a common destiny. We are more interconnected and interdependent than we have ever been. And that, I believe, is to the benefit of all of humanity. So I raise a glass. To the enduring friendship between our nations and the friendship between us as leaders. Cheers. Thank you. please.
Camera, my camera.
Thank you very much. And I will now introduce President Yoon. Thank you.
해리스 부통령님,
Vice President
그리고
Harris,
엠호프 부군님,
Second Gentleman
블링컨
Hoff,
장관님,
Secretary Blinken,
라이언 비서관님,
White House Cabinet
그리고
Secretary
유빈
Ryan,
양.
and distinguished guests.
세계 외교의 중심부인 이곳
I extend my
국무부에
gratitude to
초대해
you for
주셔서
inviting me to the
감사합니다.
heart of global diplomacy,
두려움
this
없는
Department of
전사인
State.
우리
With
해리스
Vice
부통령,
President Harris, a
그리고
fearless
한미
fighter, and with
동맹의
strong supporters of the
강력한
ROK-US
지지자분들과
alliance,
함께하고 있으니까 그
it
어떤
feels as
도전도
though there is no
이겨낼 수
obstacle
있을 것
that we
같습니다.
cannot overcome.
여러분들과 함께 있으니까 정말
It
마음이
is truly
든든합니다.
reassuring.
이 건물의 이름이
I heard that the
해리
name of this
트루만
building is the Harry
빌딩이라고
S. Truman
들었습니다.
Building.
제 용산
President
집무실 책상
Biden
위에는
gifted me a
바이든
plaque with
대통령께서
President
작년
Truman's
방한 때
words
선물해
that I
주신
keep on my office
트루만
desk. He granted
대통령의
me this
말씀이
plaque last
새긴
year
그
in
명패가
Korea.
놓여져 있습니다. 모든 책임은
And the plaque reads, "The
여기서
buck stops
끝난다.
here."
The buck stops here. 이 문구를
This
보면서
phrase reminds me
자유와
of the
민주주의를
devotion and
위한
responsibility
헌신과 책임을
for freedom
가슴에
and democracy.
새깁니다. 여러분도 아시다시피
As you're well aware,
트루만 대통령은
President Truman,
1950년 6월 25일
in
공산군이
1953,
침략했을 때
when
즉각
communism
미군을
attacked
투입하고
Korea,
안보리를
he
소집해서
dispatched UN forces
유엔군을
and also put
보내주신
together the
분입니다.
UN Security Council and
지난
came to our
70년간
rescue.
한미 동맹은
For the past 70
참전
years, the
용사들의
ROK-US alliance
희생으로
has developed
다져진
into the most
그 토양
successful
위에서
alliance in history
역사상
on the soil
가장
that was fortified
성공적인
by the
동맹으로
sacrifice
발전했습니다.
of Korean War veterans.
대한민국이
The
전쟁의
Republic of Korea was
폐허에서
able to rise from the
국제적
ashes of
위상을 가진
war to
국가로
become a country with
성장한
global
것은
stature,
바로 이 동맹의
thanks to
힘이었습니다.
the power of the
어제 저와
ROK-US
바이든
alliance.
대통령은
Yesterday,
한미
President
동맹의
Biden and
발전
myself
방향에 관해
had an invaluable discussion
다양한 유익한
on
협의를
where the
가졌습니다.
ROK-US alliance should head
저는 이를
towards.
바탕으로
And based on our
양국 국민에
discussion,
대한 실질적
I plan to
혜택을
develop our
확대하는
alliance in a way
방향으로
that expands
동맹을
practical
발전시켜
benefits for the peoples of
나가고자
both
합니다.
our countries.
우리의 미래는
Our future
과거보다
will be
더
brighter
찬란할
than the
것입니다.
past.
우리 양국은
Our two countries will
강력한
build
힘에 의한
peace through
평화를
strength
구축하고
and lead
동아시아와
the
세계의
solidarity
평화를
of freedom
촉진하는
to promote peace in
자유의
East Asia
연대를 이끌어갈
and the
것입니다.
rest of the world.
반도체,
We will further strengthen
퀀텀,
our solidarity
AI,
and cooperation in
우주,
cutting-edge
사이버를
future
포함한
technologies,
미래 첨단 기술에서도
including
한미는
semiconductors,
연대와
quantum,
공조를 심화할
artificial
것입니다.
intelligence, space, and cyber.
그리고 양국의 젊은
And the
인재들은
young talents of our
서로를
two
통해
countries
배우며
will learn from one
자유,
another
평화,
and
번영의
build a free,
인태
peaceful,
지역을
and
만들어 나갈
prosperous
것입니다.
Indo-Pacific region.
글로벌 현안에
We will also
대해서도
work very closely
양국은
together
더욱 긴밀히
in response
협력해
to
나갈
pending global issues.
해리스 부통령님과
Vice President Harris,
블링컨
Secretary
장관님을
Blinken,
비롯하여
and
오늘 이
all
자리에
distinguished
모이신
participants gathered
참석자
here
한 분 한
today
분이 한미
are the
글로벌
mainstays of the
포괄적
global
전략
comprehensive
동맹의
strategic alliance
주역이십니다.
between the Republic of Korea
우리
and the United
동맹이
States.
힘차게
We look
전진해
forward
나가는
to your
길에
continued support
모두
as the
함께해
ROK-US
주시기를
alliance marches
기원합니다.
forward.
감사합니다.
Thank you very much.